And this is, of course, what we can see. It has been hit, some of the building of this complex.
Have you seen how badly it was hit? I mean, we are looking at some pictures with an enormous hole in this building. It seems the building is still standing. Have you seen other buildings, how badly they were hit?
Well, some of the buildings have been hit, but we don't see really how they have been hit. We see them come from quite far away, that's all.
Okay. In this press conference, which happened about an hour and a half ago, the information minister in Iraq has made the claim that more than 200 civilians have been injured thus far in Baghdad, and he offered to take people to see these civilians. Has that in fact happened? Have you seen any of these alleged 207-odd civilians injured?
No, I didn't see anybody, but this is what the Ministry of Information said, that it's obviously true. I think the bombing was very tough. And now, at this moment, some journalists are in the hospitals precisely to see the victims of these bombings.
I think there are some people who would question whether something that the Ministry of Information said is necessarily and obviously true. He also made the claim that only 19 missiles have actually hit, and he said that they've only hit in a very small area. Does that jibe with what you have seen, what you have witnessed of the bombing thus far?
You know, this is very difficult to see. All I can say is that the bombing was very, very tough. It hits the center of Baghdad, but it hits also the suburbs of the city. But it was really very difficult to count the bombings.
I know it's really tough moving around. I know you're really not able to move. Have you been able to see anyone on the streets? What is the mood in Baghdad at this hour?
Yes, this is a surrealistic aspect of Baghdad, is that life is almost normal now. It was a very tough night, but now you have cars in the street, people working, some shops reopened. They are living quite normally after a nightmare night.
Tell us a little bit what the bombing was like for you as you watched it, as you felt it, and I imagine you did feel it. What was it like?
Sorry, I don't hear you.
I'm sorry, let me just repeat the question. Tell us.
Hello?
Do you hear me, Alan? It seems...
yes,
okay.
Now again, yes.
Tell me, I'm interested just from your personal perspective, what it was like watching that bombing and feeling it. And I imagine you felt it because the repercussions, from what I understand, could be felt in quite a wide swath. What was it like, personally, your experience?
Oh, it was very, very tough. Especially the bombing just on the riverside. We are on the other side of the river, but it was maybe 200 meters from the bombings, and it was really very hard, very tough, and well, we feared a lot at that time.
Were you actually able to witness it? Were you in a bunker of any kind? Where were you?
No, now I'm broadcasting from the roof of the Ministry of Information, where all the SNGs are.
Okay, I'm interested to hear how you would categorize the amount of anti-aircraft weaponry you saw in terms of the resistance that was offered. Is there anything how would you characterize it?
Well, there was a lot of anti-aircraft shootings from the Iraqi forces, but you know, we didn't see even the planes, so they were certainly very high, and any anti-aircraft defense in this case is not efficient.
How have things changed in the amount of time that you have been in Baghdad? How is today different than yesterday and the week before? I know you said it is surreal. Surreal in what sense? In what way?
Well, the city is, I could say, quite normal, as it would be, for instance, a Friday. Of course, 1 week ago it was overcrowded, difficult traffic and things like that. Now the traffic is very easy, but the city is not closed. There is no curfew, you know. The people are living more or less normally after the bombings.
All right, Alain de Chevron with French TV Channel 2. I appreciate you joining us live from Baghdad. Thanks very much.
All right, we have some news just into the CNN Center. I believe this is from Reuters. Apparently, just outside of Basra, which is only about 30 miles from Qasr, where there is another battle taking place. But west of Basra, U.S. tanks are battling Iraqi forces. We don't know much more about that, but let me read this wire copy for you. U.S. Marine tanks battled Iraqi forces on the western outskirts of Basra. That's according to a U.S. Marine captain. He said, "We are attacking Iraqi forces, all of which are west of Basra." This is from Captain Andrew Bergen. He said, "I would certainly say it is a major battle." Now we're seeing the map. As you can see, Basra very close to Qasr, and that's where American military helicopters, Cobras, are fighting pockets of resistance on the ground.
And this is a report out of Reuters Newswire, and we've just gotten that and just bringing it to you as we get it. Again, just one of the pieces of the puzzle. We know there is ongoing conflict, or at least there was some 20 or 30 minutes ago when we last checked in with both Christian Amanpour and Jason Bellini, who are in Qasr. The action that was taking place there, both in the new port, which had been secured, if we can use that term. That's where Christian Amanpour was, secured by British troops, and you are seeing a live picture from Qasr. You're seeing a ship, a tanker ship of some sort. It looks like it's actually moving a little bit. Jason Bellini was in the old port, where there are still what he described as pockets of resistance. Marines not only attack helicopters, firing on some of those, apparently firing on some of those pockets of resistance, but actually going building to building, searching rooms, trying to secure that area.
And of course, the big problem there, some soldiers, Iraqi soldiers, are dressed up as civilians. So the situation is pretty tense and pretty dangerous. Christian Amanpour also reporting from there, saying that it shouldn't take long, but who knows in these situations? And we don't know.
And a pretty ominous.
If the battle going on in Basra, 30 miles to the north, has anything to do with this. But the thing is really Allied forces expected very little resistance in both of these places.
Yeah, and it seems largely, as Christian reported, the town is largely secure, but again, it's just these pockets of resistance, and as anyone who knows much about the military will tell you, a sniper, a well-trained sniper with a well-calibrated weapon can keep at bay a very large number of troops, and we do not know that is happening right now in Qasr, but again, we're hearing of pockets of resistance. We've heard the word sniper used, and that, of course, is what the Marines are looking for right now in the old port area.
Quite different from what's apparently happening in Basra, because this Marine captain, is saying, "I would certainly say it's a major battle." They're in tanks there, so that's different from what's going on in Qasr, where most of the artillery fire is coming from the air, from military helicopters in the air. I want to go to northern Iraq now, because there has been some skirmishes there from firing on an Al-Qaeda-linked group. Kevin Seitz is there. He's going to tell us more about that. Good morning.
Good morning, Carol. Since last I spoke to you, just to remind viewers, we're in Cham Chamal, which is about 40 kilometers away from Kirkuk. This is Kurdish-held territory. It's basically free Iraq, and we butt right up against the Iraqi front lines here, the forces of Saddam Hussein. It's been kind of quiet this morning until about 15 minutes ago when the Iraqi forces have fired off 3 mortars. They've hit not too far from their own lines. We don't really understand what they're doing there, but that's the first action we've seen from this front line. Maybe it's just to let the Kurdish fighters know they're still there after the bombing of Kirkuk last night. About 8:45 last night, we saw basically a white-hot glow in the horizon over my shoulder as Kirkuk was being attacked by U.S. bombers. Now, our sources here, PUK, Patriotic Union of Kurdistan sources, tell us that it wasn't Kirkuk, the city center, that was being attacked, but the Halid military compound. That's an Iraqi military compound that houses the 1st Iraqi Legion. There's also an air base there, as well as ammunition depots. The PUK sources we have here were calling family members who were watching the attack. They didn't see bombs fall on Kirkuk. That doesn't mean there hasn't been any, but they couldn't observe any. What they did see was bombs going west towards that military base. Now, the other incident that you mentioned, Ansar al-Islam, that is the Islamic group, the fundamentalist Islamic group that Colin Powell has linked to al-Qaeda and has said that the Iraqi regime of Saddam Hussein, that is his al-Qaeda connection here, Ansar al-Islam. And there were reports that 30 cruise missiles hit Ansar al-Islam locations along the border with Iran and Iraq. It's a force of maybe about 600 fighters there. They are Taliban-like, we are told. And that is happy news to the Kurds here because they have been fighting these guys off and on. It's a left flank that they've had to watch for quite a long time. And there are reports that the Peshmerga, that's the Kurdish militia, is preparing to do battle with Ansar al-Islam either today or tomorrow. That may be an overstatement. They say they're preparing to fight sometimes and they don't do battle. But now that these targets are softened up, PUK sources tell us they'll probably go in. Another development, there's been a lot of things happening here in Kurdistan this morning and overnight. There certainly have been interesting developments south of us, but there's a whole geopolitical dynamic that's going on here. We also have reports that there are 1,000 Turkish troops that have moved into the north of Kurdistan, and that is something that the Kurds are not very happy with. They're sworn enemies with the Turks. They have been negotiating with the U.S. to keep the Turks out of the region, and it could have some significance as far as Kurdish support. The Kurds do not want Saddam Hussein. They are supporting this military action against him, but they are very concerned about Turks being in the region, and that will be their first choice to fight if they come much further down. That is what they're telling us. That is their major concern.
Kevin, a question about that. Now that Turkish forces are in there, how might that complicate things for the U.S. military?
Well, it complicates things quite a bit. It's not that they're going to halt any military action, obviously. I mean, it's well underway. It's going to complicate the political maneuvering they need to do. They need the Kurds on their side. They need their support to build a unified Iraq after this war is over. And the Kurds, although they support this military action against Saddam Hussein, they're very wary of U.S. intentions. After the Gulf War, the Kurds were told to uprise against Saddam Hussein and that the U.S. would support them. The U.S. pulled out of that promise, and the Kurds have not forgotten that. They're concerned at this point that Turkey may have a toehold within Kurdistan. They don't want that to happen. They don't want the Turks on their territory. And, this is going to be an ongoing political discussion. If the United States wants the Kurds to be a part of this coalition, they're going to have to do some damage control as far as this is concerned. Perhaps, preventing the Turks from advancing any further into Kurdistan. Carol?
Yeah, negotiations with Turkey haven't exactly been stellar in the past. Kevin, I wanted to ask you about this. You talked about how the Kurds are supporting the U.S. military and they don't like Saddam Hussein. You had some interesting pictures a couple of hours ago of Iraqis seemingly dancing. Can you tell us about that?
That's right. What you were seeing, this is the day after the Kurdish New Year, Nowruz, and a lot of these guys, they're very happy with what's going on here, and this was just kind of a spontaneous dance. It was actually one of our fixers and a couple of drivers and some friends from the PUK here. And as we were preparing for a live shot, they just decided to go ahead and start dancing and singing. It's something they do here very often. I mean, the national pastime is going out for picnics in the hills and dancing. They're really colorful. They're happy. They're happy people. And what we've seen from here, that they have a very, very positive attitude despite the suffering they've endured for such a long time.
You're not kidding. I see some of them are holding white kerchiefs. Any significance to them?
Unfortunately, I'm not an authority on Kurdish dancing. I guess it's a Kurdish folk dance, and the men jump in and they have a good time, and it's great to watch them. It's great fun. I have to tell you, from a personal standpoint, they've endured a lot of hardship. We're paid and paid fairly well to do what we do, to come out to a war zone. These people, they come with us. In some instances, providing information for CNN, it's not their battle. They don't have to do it to the extent that they do. But they stay here and they suffer with us. They sleep in cement huts like us. They eat food that isn't hot. They suffer bad weather. And, they come up smiling and do the work for us. All the information that you get from us could not happen without our sources here on the ground, feeding us, talking to the PUK people, getting us information, double-checking it, and coming back to us and informing. We don't speak the language. In some ways, we're like infants here, and we need help. We know what we want to do, but we need a lot of help doing it.
Well, that's terrific. You know, something I'm struck by, the picture beside you probably can't see it, but it's of southern Iraq, of the 7th Cavalry, pausing here because there was enemy fire ahead. And you can see the difference in terrain from southern Iraq and northern Iraq. It's so green where you are and so brown in southern Iraq.
And so cold here, too, Carol. The temperatures dipped way below freezing. We didn't get much sleep anyway. We're watching the air war. But the climate is incredibly different. As you said, there are rolling green hills behind us. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. Beautiful streams and rivers, and the mountains are absolutely spectacular. Quite a difference from the desert terrain down south.
Yeah, and it's very hot down south, too. You said you were watching the bombing on television. Were any of the Kurds present watching with you? And if so, what was their reaction?
No, we don't have a television out here. In fact, we barely have battery-powered radio. We actually could see the glow of the bombing that was happening in Kirkuk. We're about 40 kilometers from there, so we could see that happen. And also, the Iraqi troops that are just about 2 kilometers away from us opened up with their anti-aircraft fire. So we got a little show of our own from here, and we were able to watch it directly. We couldn't see the bombs drop, but we could see the glow from their aftermath.
All right,
as well as the anti-aircraft fire. You know, they're all excited, you know, when they actually see this. I mean, they want to see Saddam Hussein go in a big way.
All right, Kevin Seitz, you stay safe, reporting from northern Iraq this morning.
All right, now, if you are just joining us, there is an ongoing conflict right now in southeastern Iraq, the town of Qasr. Also, apparently, further on the road to Baghdad, on the road to Basra, I should say. We're going to check in right now with Chris Plant at the Pentagon. Chris, before we get to that, let's just talk briefly about this helicopter. This helicopter, apparently an accident that occurred shortly ago. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it was at about 4:30 a.m. local time in the Persian Gulf, Anderson. 2 British H-3 Sea King helicopters had taken off from a ship operating in the region, a British ship, and a short time after departing the ship, they apparently collided in flight and crashed into the Persian Gulf. Aboard were 3 British crew members on each helicopter, and 1 American was aboard on one of the helicopters also. It's unclear right now whether the American was a member of the U.S. military or a civilian, perhaps a contractor. Details are sketchy at this point, and we're still waiting for some additional details on that. Search and rescue helicopters were launched off of nearby ships almost immediately, and search and rescue divers in the water at the scene of the crash very, very quickly after the incident, yet it's still believed that all 7 people aboard were killed.
No, Chris, I know it's obviously it's 3:52 a.m. at the Pentagon right now here on the East Coast, so there is not a lot of information being given out. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Some of them you probably won't be able to answer, and that's fine. We are getting word, you may have seen Christian Amanpour, Jason Bellini reporting in the last hour from Qasr, pockets of resistance still being mopped up. We haven't heard from them about 20 minutes or so. Not sure if those pockets of resistance still exist. Likely they are. Jason Bellini reporting Marines going in the Old Port House building to building. They have not yet moved on to tankers to search those. And then we just got this report from Reuters, which says that U.S. Marine tanks battled Iraqi forces on the western outskirts of Basra on Saturday. Quotes a Marine Captain Andrew Bergen saying, "We are attacking Iraqi forces, all of which are west of Basra. I would certainly say it is a major battle." Again, that a Reuters report. CNN has not been able to independently confirm it yet. I'm assuming you haven't heard anything fresh on this. Have you heard anything from the Pentagon?
Not a lot in the way of detail, Anderson. We are aware here that there is apparently a take battle taking place. Marines took up positions west of Basra yesterday in the early on in the ground offensive. They have staked out that position since early yesterday morning, pushing people back who were attempting to leave Basra, asking them to stay in Basra, hoping there that there would be a peaceful entry into the city. This is Basra in the south is a largely Shiite city, and the Shiites have suffered under the regime of Saddam Hussein. They look forward for the most part to the removal of the Saddam Hussein regime. The move on Basra was not expected to be very problematic, but outside of Basra, they've apparently run into some resistance from Iraqi forces, not all of whom are surrendering, although there have been thousands of troops that have surrendered to U.S. and British forces. Some are, in fact, putting up a fight. There have been reports of exchange of tank rounds between U.S. and Iraqi forces. It's not clear right now whether these are Republican Guard forces. There have been some reports that there were Republican Guard forces down in that area. But clearly, tank battles taking place, some conflict, perhaps more than the planners had expected in southern Iraq, where most of the soldiers there, the Iraqi soldiers, are conscripts, they're draftees, they're not treated very well, they're not paid well, they're not fed well, they're not equipped or trained well for the most part, but there were also reports that Baghdad had sent political officers out into the field to marry up, if you will, with the forces in the field, and in an effort to compel them to fight when the American troops came in. So there have been some clashes yesterday, as you know. The taking of the oil fields in the south led to 2 fatalities from the U.S. Marine Corps. So there is some fighting going on, even as troops move toward Baghdad from a number of directions.
And Chris, just so you know, the viewers on the right-hand side of our screen are seeing a tanker probably off the port of Qasr. Again, there's both an old port and a new port. Christian Amanpour is reporting the last hour. The new port is secured largely by British forces. It is under their authority at this hour. We heard from Jason Bellini in the old port, about a mile away from the new port. There are still pockets of resistance. We saw Cobra helicopters circling overhead. We heard from Jason reports of Marines going building to building. At last word, Jason was saying that those tankers, which you're seeing a tanker right there in your picture, had not yet been searched. Some of the tankers that were both in the water offshore and in the port not yet being searched. Let's just talk a little bit, though, Chris, about the significance both of Qasr and of Basra, and the significance both in terms of tactically, Qasr, I assume, being the place where U.S. military was hoping to get humanitarian assistance through, it being a port, very important strategically, and also Basra, just in terms of going to a place where the reception was, from all predictions, going to be quite receptive. Largely, as you mentioned, a Shiite community. They had been an uprising there after the last Gulf War, an uprising that was brutally repressed by Saddam's regime. So the hope, I suppose, on the part of Pentagon planners was that there would be pictures of people of troops being greeted with open arms, with thanks and praise. It very well may happen, but there is an alteration to that plan going on right now.
Well, that certainly appears to be the case. We did see some video that came out of Basra earlier today where Marines were in part of downtown Basra, a fairly large city. It's Iraq's second largest city, and Marines were being received fairly warmly, actually, by members of the Shiite community there in Basra. They joined in with the Marines in tearing down a poster, a placard of Saddam Hussein, and it appeared that at least where these Marines were in this large city, there was no resistance, and they were being welcomed. It is, in fact, something that the Pentagon planners had hoped to see. They hoped to see more of that, maybe even cheering in the streets. They wanted these images to get out to the public early on in an effort to show that they were liberating and not coming to conquer or dominate Iraq, as is being put out by the regime of Saddam Hussein.
All right.
They're getting a little bit of that, but clearly there is some combat taking place. I think that this is outside of Basra, not in Basra. But some Iraqi troops clearly are fighting.
That is the report, and fighting apparently in civilian outfits, at least in Qasr and places. Chris Plante, live at the Pentagon. Thanks very much. Carol?
And Chris, and you were talking about casualties. Well, of course, word came early Friday that Operation Iraqi Freedom has claimed its first coalition casualties. Our Thelma Gutierrez reports from Camp Pendleton.
The flag at Camp Pendleton flies at half-staff. 3 of the 4 U.S. coalition casualties in Iraq were from Camp Pendleton. They died along with another American and 8 British soldiers when their CH-46 transport helicopter crashed and burned near the Iraqi border. Officials say caused by mechanical failure. The pilot was 30-year-old Captain Ryan Beaupre.
We were scared that something like this would happen.
He is mourned by family in his hometown of Bloomington, Illinois.
He did always want to fly. He thought that he could do more as a person, and said that he was going to join the Marine Corps.
Also killed in the helicopter crash, 36-year-old Major Jay Obin of Waterville, Maine, 25-year-old Corporal Brian Kennedy of Houston, Texas, and 29-year-old Staff Sergeant Kendall Watersby of Baltimore, Maryland.
George Bush, take a good look at this, man, because you took my only son away from me.
His father angrily blamed George W. Bush.
You lose your only son and child, and you don't really know what's really going on, but what they tell you.
When anyone loses a member of their family, it's not something that's taken lightly, and we mourn the loss of these Marines.
Before the end of the second day of the ground invasion, 2 more Marines were killed in action at this family diner in Fort Stewart, Georgia. Military families, many with relatives serving in the Gulf, watch nervously as the war unfolds, hoping there will be no more casualties, but somehow knowing it will not be the end.
I just hope they get back safe, do a good job. I know they've all been trained to do it, and just do your job and get back home safe.
Get it over with and bring them home.
Thelma Gutierrez, CNN, Camp Pendleton.
And we're providing early warning detection for the possibility of any missiles coming in towards these aircraft carriers. They apparently collided midair, and everyone aboard was lost. Also overnight, we have an incident involving the 101st Airborne. Apparently, one of the soldiers allegedly threw hand grenades inside the command bunker and exchange of small weapons fire. He was taken prisoner, being questioned. One of the U.S. soldiers was killed in that incident. Another dozen were wounded. So 3 incidents in the last 24 hours or so that probably gives some grave concern to military planners.
And I have questions for you about each one, Tom. First of all, let's go back to the British aircraft that was shot down by that Patriot missile. Do we know if it was engaged in combat?
Well, if it was returning from a mission in southern Iraq, it's pretty fair to assume that it was involved in hostile operations. The group captain did tell us that it was returning from an operation inside Iraq, so it's fair to assume that they were involved in some type of offensive operations inside Iraq and returning to base when it was apparently fired on, as they say, by a Patriot missile battery. So outside of that, returning from an operation, that's about all we know.
And Tom, these Patriot missiles lock on to a target, correct? Can you explain to us sort of what that means?
Well, I'm not an expert in Patriot missiles, but I do have some experience around them. They are used traditionally, and they have been used in this campaign to shoot down Scuds. Scud missiles, Iraqi missiles that were fired from inside Iraq towards Kuwait. They have engaged those missiles and shot them down on more than one occasion. So this is a device that is used against incoming missiles. It's quite strange that apparently, if it proves to be true, that this British aircraft was targeted by the missile battery.
Tom and Tier, we're going to let you go. Thanks for your information. We want to go back to Qatar because we're seeing new live pictures.
Fighting as far as this
particular the British reporter on scene.
That's correct, over.
Well, there you have it, Martin. We started some 4 hours ago at the beginning of this with a fairly substantial firefight. We've gone through tank fire, airstrikes, and now we're collecting prisoners of war. The U.S. Marines are out there now, mopping up, and as you heard the Staff Sergeant say, it looks as though this particular operation in terms of aggressive opportunities is now over.
And in case you have not been following along with us over the last 2 or so hours, this has been an operation which has captivated much of our coverage and much coverage throughout the world, both in the United States television, Arab television, European television. These images carried live really across the world. What we saw, a platoon at least of Marines took some sort of fire, they believed, from an area there were some buildings in. They took up defensive positions. Tanks came in. Tanks shot up the area using some heavy machine guns. Then an airstrike was called in. And as we've just heard, the British reporter on the scene saying they are now taking some prisoners and that the operation is essentially over. It has been, and what you're looking on the screen, you're seeing one individual walking toward what were those buildings. We don't know who that individual is. They're moving quite fast. Doesn't necessarily look like a soldier. We're simply not sure. But what is significant about this is that this was just one small operation in a much larger area where operations are going on. It is not an operation that has brought to a halt all military activity in that area. General Wesley Clark, who was with us earlier, pointing out that simply other units would just go around this area where this operation was taking place, let the Marines on the ground deal with this, and the further operations in the area of Qasr would continue along. And there have been, over the last 48 hours or so in Qasr, sporadic pockets of resistance and small arms fire and the like being taken by various forces, British, U.S. Marines, and they have been essentially
walking across with a white flag.
Yeah, we're listening to the British pool reporter right now. That figure in the distance is apparently walking towards troops holding a white flag.
Okay. All right. I think we're going to get more airstrikes.
Aries coming back. Go ahead, Phil. Go ahead. Aries coming back.
And you're watching the situation live along with us at Qasr. And of course, we're not exactly sure what's going on, but we heard the British reporter say there may be more airstrikes on the way. Just a short time ago.
That's all right.
Let's listen.
We apparently have one Iraqi with a white flag. You can probably see him. I can't. But the other thing is that there's some talk here. We might get a Harrier back and there might be another airstrike. Just let me check on that.
Possibility of a Harrier jet coming in.
Getting the Harrier back?
Trying to get a sense of how long this has been going on.
Do you know which one it's going to hit this time?
Notice the water bottles by the Marines who are laying down. This has been going on very long. It is very hot, and they have been in those positions on the ground for many hours now.
Attention all networks, AP is about to feed a soundbite from the missing RAF plane.
Again, we had heard from the British reporter on the scene that the operation seemed to be over. Now he seems to be saying that they are perhaps waiting for another airstrike. Obviously another airstrike perhaps being called in because they feel there are still some forces there who have not given up. We saw about a minute or two ago one figure walking to the left of the screen, apparently with a white flag. Couldn't see it from our vantage point, but according to the British reporter on the scene.
Apart from the two vehicles we saw earlier a few minutes ago, Francis, no. There was some reports here that, in fact, British troops may well be on the ground clearing the area. But the latest speculation is that there may, in fact, be another airstrike. The Harrier that peeled off may, in fact, come back here and deliver another bomb. That is unconfirmed. But whilst the situation, certainly for the most part, appears calm here at the moment, it's fairly obvious that despite what the Staff Sergeant said, there are still precautions to be taken, and this situation is still very much live and is evolving as we speak.
You are listening to the voice of David Bowden, a British pool reporter. Pool reporter meaning that all news outlets have access to the images and the sound that he is collecting at this scene. So you hear...
I think what he was doing was checking the lie of the land because, of course, he has 4-2 Commando waiting. They've just cleared the other side of the river. They need to be in here so that they can help set up for the humanitarian aid, but they're not going to do that while this place is still under the control of the 15 the U.S. Marines until they move on to their next task. Then obviously there's not a hole for other people to come in and fill. At the moment, the status quo pertains. They are still here. 4-2 Commando are doing what they initially set out to do, which is sweep from where they were put ashore on the Al Faw Peninsula all the way across to here. They're now pretty much here, according to the Deputy Commander, Steve Cox, who told us this morning. And we're just being told that we have to go back on the other side of the berm. It looks like a rerun of what we have just had again. It looks as though the idea of another airstrike is in fact now up and running once again. I am going to leave the microphone. I will come back up on the telephone as soon as I'm able to.
All right, you can see that they're taking cover again as the Marines gather their guns and their bottles of water to go behind a protective wall at Qasr. We're going to stay with this picture, don't worry, as we await a second round of airstrikes at Qasr. We want to go to south central Iraq now to check in with Walter Rogers, who again has more information, and I see fire burning behind you, Walter.
Yes, Carol, the fire which you see behind me is the remnant of an Iraqi army ammunition dump, which was positioned fairly close to the road along which the 3rd Squadron, U.S. Army 7th Cavalry, has been traveling. There is still a remnant of that Iraqi battalion up there. They've been shooting small arms fire and shoulder-fired missiles at the U.S. Army's helicopter, so we now are given to believe that this unit will be calling in Air Force close air support. An airstrike should be called in perhaps in the next few seconds. We're not sure, but we do believe that whatever's left of that Iraqi unit up there, which was once battalion size, is about to face a terrible pounding from the air. The Air Force can operate today because there's an almost unlimited ceiling. That was not possible yesterday, so it was not possible to call in the jets yesterday. Nonetheless, there are some Iraqi soldiers up the road. A short while ago behind me, a U.S. Army Humvee was traveling up that road. A rocket-propelled grenade was fired at that Humvee. We're told there were no U.S. casualties, which is a rather fantastic event because the Humvees are soft-skinned and an RPG is a relatively formidable weapon. One of the officers here told me that those who fired that RPG at the U.S. Army Humvee are no longer existent on this planet. Back to you, Carol.
So I couldn't hear you for just a time, so you're awaiting airstrikes as well, Walter.
That's correct. We've been told that the position which you see behind me, where the plumes of smoke from that ammunition dump, which was hit several hours ago, still coming up. There are pockets of Iraqi resistance there. There's the remnant of a battalion. It is not clear how many Iraqi soldiers are up there. They're hidden in a grove of trees and some small buildings in the area. So we're given to believe that close air support is being called in, which is to say the place is about to be bombed and strafed, and any of those Iraqis left in there are going to face some very serious firepower from the air.
Oddly enough, Walter, there's almost the same scenario is going on right now in Qasr. There's a grove of trees and a group of buildings. Don't know how many Iraqis are hiding there. Airstrikes on the way. You know, it's just strange that it's almost the same situation where you are.
Well, of course, in a situation like that, any army, and in this case, the Iraqis who are left in that battalion, even this army unit has never been able to identify what battalion it was, but they take advantage of whatever cover, whatever topography they have, which works to their advantage. What they have to their advantage is a small grove of trees, actually, and remember, this is our spring here. Those trees are in full leaf, so they have some camouflage. The Iraqis to hide in from the visual sightings from tanks and Bradleys here on the ground, and then you have the ubiquitous low flat mud huts that are used in this part of the world as housing, and that's where the Iraqis are. As I say, close air support has been called in where artillery had been used in the past. U.S. Army helicopters, the Kiowas, have been firing on those Iraqis intermittently this morning, but it's been difficult for the Kiowas because they fly low to the ground. Yes?
Walter, we're going to pause and listen. We hear the aircraft coming to Qasr now.
If you've ever been on the ground and you hear this overhead, it is an extraordinarily ominous sound, and one can only imagine what must be going through the minds of anyone in those positions in the Iraqi forces as they hear this. General Wesley Clark telling us a few moments ago that often when there is not the expectation of receiving ground fire, often a plane will circle overhead for quite some time, looking at the target, trying to decide. Well, it looks
the Marines are coming back, Anderson.
It looks like they've decided not to drop more munitions.